if all of the facts and matters that I've just described are true, and if what you say is reliable, was there a conspiracy at the post office which lasted for nearly 12 years, involving a wide range of people, differing over time, to deny you information and to deny you documents and to falsely give you reassurance?
No, I don't believe that was the case. You've covered a range of different issues. I have been disappointed, particularly more recently, listening to evidence at the inquiry where I think I have learned that people knew more than perhaps either they remembered at the time or I knew of at the time. I have no sense that there was any conspiracy at all. My deep sorrow in this is that I think that individuals, myself included, made mistakes, didn't see things, didn't hear things. I may be wrong, but that wasn't the impression that I had at the time. I have more questions now, but conspiracy feels too far-fetched.
There wouldn't be a motive for such people to deny you information, deny you documents, and falsely to give you reassurance where it wasn't warranted, would there?
I think you conflate too many different things, if I may, because you've covered bugs and IT, you've covered legal advices, the chairman's report by Jonathan Swift. I can't see that over that period of time that individuals working on all of those documents could have conspired or had a reason to withhold them. The inquiry heard from Susan Crichton, and this is a serious governance lesson, that it was not the practice in the post office and the legal team and in Royal Mail Group previously to share legal advices. They may have had very good reasons for that, some of which I'm sure were related to legal privilege, but they were not shared, and as Susan explained, the outcomes were discussed. So as we go through some of those documents, which we may do, I'm sure that I will recognise some of the recommendations. I have to say, having read some of them, particularly one of the Brian Altman advices, where as he was reviewing prosecution policy, he was hugely critical of, prior to 2012-13, the documentation, the policies in place, the approach. That advice was never shared with me, with the group executive, with the board. Had we seen it, we may well have asked very, very different questions. What was shared was the outcome of that advice, and different policies and procedures were put in place. But I think there is too much reliance, or there was too much reliance, on the lead general counsels in that case, and I'm not particularly making a point about general counsels, but to take a decision as to what was shared from those reports, because what happened is they were then, as the inquiry has seen, they were then reproduced into board documents, which were shared. But the original advice would have been so much more useful, and one of the biggest lessons for me in this is that advices should be, that boards, chief executives and group executives should know when advices are commissioned. They should know when they're received, because some were received that were not commissioned, and they should see them.
You focused on legal advice. I've asked you about a range of things, including the contract with Fujitsu, the information about bugs, errors and defects. If there isn't a conspiracy operative to deny you this information, what's the reason that so much of it didn't reach you?
The contract with Fujitsu would not have been... the contract with Fujitsu, sorry, let me start again, existed over a very, very long period of time, as the inquiry knows. I was involved with reviewing the strategy and some of the content of the contract with Fujitsu as we prepared to retender the Horizon system in up and during 2015. The original contract with Fujitsu and versions before that would not have crossed my desk as network director or as managing director. What should have happened is the service level agreements within that contract should have been reported on differently than they were. And that also might point to some of your points about bugs, errors and defects. Because if I turn to those, the reporting that the group executive, the chief executive and the board received, and the inquiry heard this from Leslie Sewell as well, was at different levels. So I think we had a level 0 and a level 1 that came to my level and to the board. Issues that cropped up below that were not reported. One of the biggest challenges, as I have been going through all of this documentation, is realizing how much went on at an individual postmaster level. So when a bug affected large numbers of post offices, or there was an outage which affected large numbers of post offices, or a network failure, they were raised. But if a single sub-postmaster made a call X number of times to a service centre, it wouldn't have been picked up. And I think from a governance point of view, there is, and the point has been made previously, a very important lesson around the issue of the institution and the individual. How does somebody, as a chief executive of an institution this large and complex, have sight to what happens to an individual if they are affected by a bug? The only thing I can think about is that it ought to be possible to have data which reports the number of times a postmaster may complain about something, the number of disputes that have not been resolved, age disputes, disputes where postmasters have challenged them.
Isn't all this really obvious?
It is, and it wasn't in place, and it should have been.
If it was really obvious, why wasn't it in place?
I think because of the way that the reporting had been planned. Management information across many areas of a business tends to be written in layers of escalation. And the layers of escalation that were selected around IT and Fujitsu were such that it didn't. And I think this probably happens in many, many other large institutions too. It didn't give you, on a board, a line of sight to what happened to an individual. And we are seeing the terrible impact of that today.
So is the overall answer to my question that you don't believe that there was a conspiracy to deny you information and documents? The reason such information and documents didn't reach you was the way that the company was organised and structured?
I think in the majority of cases, yes, that is true.
And who was responsible for organising and structuring the company?
Sorry, if I may just say, the other point is that I have seen documents and I have heard evidence where I think colleagues did know more information than was shared, and in those cases either mistakes were made or they decided it wasn't appropriate to do so. To your first point, in terms of, sorry, could you say that again?
Yes. If it was the organisation and structure of the company that prevented this information and these documents from reaching you, who was responsible for organising and structuring the company after you became CEO?
I was responsible for... As CEO, you're accountable for everything. You have experts who report to you.